Greetings, Hamptonians. Welcome to the C-Suite panel. Thank you all for joining, especially big thanks to those on the panel that you'll get to meet shortly. I am Gena Pemberton, the president of the National Hampton Alumni Association, and I'm super excited for this panel, which is featuring alumni in STEM. So really excited about that. I'm going to kick it over to our host, who is a young alum, which is what we do with these panels, Justin Shaifer, class of 16. But before I do, I just want to give you guys a few pieces of info in the chat below. Post any questions that you'd like Justin to ask the panelists, or if you have a question for Justin, of course, as well. And make sure that you're talking with each other a little bit in that chat as well. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel. So that you can stay in the know for when we have other NHAA events. So a quick note about Justin. He's a rising star in STEM education and advocacy. He's also known as Mr. Fascinate. He's a popular science communicator with a talent for inspiring Gen Z. He is a science education PhD student at Teachers College of Columbia University and host of WGBH's live science show, Escape Lab, featured on Twitch. We couldn't be prouder to have Justin here, and I'll pass it over to you, Justin.
What's going on, y'all? Justin Shaifer. Thank you so much, Gena. Absolute pleasure to host this C-Suite panel. I have a bunch of my own personal role models that'll be a part of this. Again, my name is Justin Shaifer. I'm a STEM entrepreneur. I traveled all over the world pre-COVID, exciting young people about the prospect of STEM careers. And now today I get to interview some folks that are walking the walk. They're folks that have gotten deep into STEM careers and they are doing their thing. And I'm really excited to have them introduce themselves as well. But I want to give a little quick backdrop. I'm representing QT9. I think there's a little bit of quintessence in the chat, right? So I want to shout out QT9 real quick. And also my major in Hampton when I graduated in 2016 was marine and environmental science. So pretty small program at the time. I think there's more students there now. So shout out to that. I was also a part of the Student Government Association. I was SGA president from 2015 to 2016. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome our panelists on board next. All right, so thank you guys so much for joining. I think we're gonna have an exciting time. We're gonna have a fun time, but it's gonna be a little chill and laid back. You know, it is after 5 p.m. after all, and you probably had a hard day at work. So why don't we start off with Kalonji? Introduce yourself, tell us what you do, tell us what you're about, and then give us your class year as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kalonji Harris. Happy holidays. I graduated from Hampton in 1998, majored in computer science. I currently work at Citigroup. I've been there for 20 years, and I'm a lead tech analyst there. My job basically includes solving business problems. That's the main focus of my job. I lead a team of developers sometimes. Sometimes I am a project manager. Sometimes I'm an operations staff manager. But overall, my job is to solve problems.
Thanks, Justin, and good evening, everyone, fellow Hamptonians and other guests. I'm Kimberly Hall. I graduated from Hampton, or my degree, I should say, was in computer science in '98. So I'm currently the Vice President and Director of Technology Transformation at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Prior to that, I've been there for just a little over a year. Prior to that, I was in the federal government. And then started though in consulting and used to work for Accenture, formerly Anderson Consulting. And my career has primarily been also delivering IT solutions for business business end users. My most recent role at the Fed, however, focusing on strategy and transformation is a different one, and one that's really cool and exciting. It gives me an opportunity to work with lots of different people and also really think strategically about where we should be investing from a technology perspective.
Awesome. Duwayno, you want to take it away?
Yeah, it's hard to follow up two people with really great backgrounds, but I'll try. My name is Duwayno Robertson. I'm a principal engineer with a company called DNVGL. We're an engineering consulting firm operating in energy, maritime, services, as well as oil and gas. I'm currently working out of Melbourne, Australia. My role here is establishing our energy storage, green hydrogen, and electric vehicle service offerings. I've been working in energy for about 6-7 years, but I've worked in renewable energy the majority of my career. Started out in automotive, so working with electric vehicles, hybrids in the States, with General Motors for about 10 years, and most recent car company I worked for was a startup called Fisker Automotive. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. That's fantastic, y'all. You know, I think being in the position that I'm in and kind of knowing what it takes to get at the level you guys are at in STEM careers, you guys are representing a percent of Black folks. And, you know, a lot of times I'm amazed by the triumphs or the obstacles that were overcome, or even the unique environments that ended up getting people interested in careers like this. So I want to ask, let's start with you, Kimberly. What drew you all to STEM in the first place?
So my love of STEM, or actually computers in general, definitely started when I was younger. My mother used to send me to computer programming camps, and it was fun. I liked the challenge. I thought it was interesting. It's funny, when I first got to Hampton, my major was electrical engineering. I quickly changed from that. But in deciding whether or not I would go computer science or not, my toss-up was actually history or computer science. So that probably sounds, not related, but I am a bit of a history buff, and I like education and all that. But for me, it was just the draw of the challenge. I like figuring out things. I like solving problems. I just thought, I think I had early exposure to the different types of things you could do in technology. So it was just interesting to me.
Gotcha. So you had a couple of classes in Olin back in the day?
I did. And I was like, you know what? I think first semester was it for me. I was like, okay, I got to figure something else out.
Gotcha. Okay. So what about you, Duwayno?
So I started out just having a general interest in math and science since I was a kid, and then it grew to where I was in high school. We used to put in car stereos, so putting in woofers and tweeters and amplifiers and all of that. That really opened up my interest in electrical engineering. So when I went to Hampton, I majored in electrical engineering. I stuck it out, even though there were some rough patches. So I know what Kim is talking about, but it's always been centered around my interest in math and science, and seeing how things work and putting things together.
Gotcha. Kalonji?
Well, my interest started a long time ago. It's kind of corny, but Star Wars was one of my favorite movies. And when you look at that movie, the pilots that are piloting these big starships, all they had was computers in front of them. They didn't have the typical flying joystick. So I kind of got interested that way. My brother had a Commodore 64, and he used to mod it. And so I had an exposure there. My mom bought a personal computer very early. So I was doing DOS, launching programs from DOS for her with the floppy disks. So just my exposure. I always was interested in it. Had a lot of exposure. I also went to a computer camp for programming. So I've always liked computers. I've always been into it. And one of the best feelings is when you actually solve a problem programmatically, when you actually, figure out the solution and it works, it is rock solid. That's like one of the best feelings that you can have. So I walked into Hampton as a computer science major, and I walked out of Hampton, computer science graduate.
Awesome. And I think all your stories are super inspirational to me, because I kind of think of myself as the same thing, like a tinkerer, a hacker who just kind of fell into STEM because I like solving problems and figuring stuff out and making cool stuff from nothing. And I think that it's different doing that in a PWI versus an HBCU. And so for me, I think Hampton played a pivotal role in my transition into a STEM career from just being kind of a nerdy or geeky hacker. So what role did Hampton play in you all's experiences today as a STEM professional?
I can take a stab at that one. The one takeaway that I had from my experience with Hampton in terms of that's always sort of stuck with me is I think going to a HBCU and the Hampton in particular, I felt like I was at home and I didn't have a lot of stressors that might occur when you go into a predominantly white college, whether or not, does a professor not like me because I'm Black, or is there a circle that I fit in? But I just really felt at home at Hampton, and then being around such a diverse group of people that were similar to me and at the same time very different. When it's when you're looking around and there's somebody that also has experience putting in car stereos, it's like that's a sort of easy one if you say you're from the South or you had cars. But when you meet somebody that's like, oh yeah, I built my stereo myself, and you're like, I wasn't really sure that you could do that. And it wasn't a matter of, man, that guy has an advantage over me, or there's some other scenario outside of just had an interest and let's talk about it. And going into a work environment, I remember people before going to Hampton, people were saying, well, it's not the real world. You're going to a all Black college. It's not a real world. You're going to find yourself having to deal with white people and not be accustomed to that. And Hampton is in a town with white people around it, and there's white people in the faculty, and internships and jobs, summer jobs, and going to the store. It's not a fantasy island scenario, but I will say it gave me, I think, more confidence in being in a foreign environment where I'm not thinking about other things. I'm just thinking about the job I have to do.
I think that's a great point. I share the same sentiments. I think definitely kind of a family environment. What I recall or remember most too is kind of those late nights in the computer science department. This idea of us sort of being all in it together. I think my experience, I felt like the administration did a really good job of making sure that we got those internships or those co-op experiences so we could really sort of see how things were. And, society always, tells us, whether it's an HBCU or just sort of in general, that our institutions, our organizations, our things are kind of second tier. But when you have kind of an institution that's reinforcing that that's not the case, that I think that definitely goes a long way. I think, I have a lot of pride in HBCUs, and, I think it teaches you certainly resourcefulness. I think about some of the things that, may not necessarily be at the disposal of certain other institutions. And, so for me, it's something that I've certainly cherished, and I've never felt, professionally speaking, like I missed out in any way. Great point, certainly on it's not the real world. That's always been just an interesting sort of thing from my perspective, because, it is the only time where you're going to be in a setting with, in the case of Hampton, 3,000 other Black female and male students that are, sort of working together. Once you get into the real world, it's definitely a different setting. But yeah, for me, it never was anything that I felt like was a shortcoming in any way, more of a badge of honor.
Yeah, and my experiences are similar also. One of the things that stands out is just is seeing Black excellence, at my age group, seeing people that are aspirational, seeing people that are inspirational. My friends all had big dreams, big plans, professionally and personally, and seeing that influence me for how I thought, and gave me confidence. Also gave me confidence that I can achieve my goals. The other thing is just seeing Black nerds. Really, I mean, there's other people that like to nerd out with me, and a lot of the communities we came from didn't have that. So, you didn't feel like an outcast. You can nerd out with someone that's sitting next to you in the computer lab.
Right. And that's such an important thing, like to feel comfortable just expressing that inner nerd. I know growing up in the South Side of Chicago, that's something that definitely resonates with me as well. We're kind of going through this chronologically at this point. We kind of talked about your start and, your transition through Hampton. And so now I want to talk about your first time in the workforce, maybe your entry-level careers in STEM. I had a couple weird things happen to me. I remember one of the managers, and I don't want to disclose the company, one of the managers of mine actually ended up petting my hair, or at least trying to. He tried to reach to pet my hair, and I think it was kind of like a jovial bro kind of thing. Like, hey, man, I just, like kind of good old sport. And, I kind of had a little Southside moment where I stepped back. I'm like, dude. And
hit him
the manager and so, it was an uncomfortable moment, but I recognized that it was a teaching moment. I'm like, dude, we don't like that. Like Black folks don't think that that's cool. And so, for you guys, do you all have any experiences like that, or maybe even lessons learned in the beginning of your career that gave you the grit to stay in the game?
I'll start. I think I had one experience. It reminds me of what you're talking about. It was a social kind of thing. My first job, folks used to, like on Fridays, go to happy hour. I was in consulting and my client was in the city. And so there was like some bar or some spot that every week, this is the place where people went. And it happened to be, I think it was like the Black Bar Association or something was in town that weekend. And it was definitely like, okay, I don't think we should go to that bar today. Like, and and it was very much this uncomfortable feeling. And the way I've always dealt with things is, I'm not afraid to kind of address the elephant in the, what's wrong with going today? And then the uncomfortable silence or awkwardness is something that other people have to sort of, be forced to answer or deal with. But it was clear in that moment that was just one of those things socially where the demographic makeup of this bar is different because there are a lot of, Black folks in town and something must be going on. So let's steer clear. So anyway, hair thing reminded me of that a little bit. But professionally speaking, I think I probably haven't dealt with anything that wouldn't be used to dealing with in general. But that one stood out as a first time for me.
Yeah, for me, it really nothing that's been to that level. But for me, it was more subtle things. Like I'd always get questions about basketball,
Yep.
Things like just things that were Black related, Black topics. They would come to me or they would look at me, and for me to break out of that, professionally, you have to step your game up. You have to really show them like, no, I have the skills, and I'm here to succeed and excel. So it kind of got squashed pretty quick once they saw my level of skill. But yeah, I was, those topics always came to me, and also just being underestimated. They kind of felt like maybe I didn't know certain things or weren't trained to that certain level. Coming from Hampton, a school that some people don't know, and just being able to exceed their expectations.
I don't have any hair now, but a long time ago, I had a lush head of hair, and fortunately, I've never had anybody try to pet it or touch it, and nothing that overt. Early in my career, I don't recall. I haven't had anything that direct early in my career. I've had moments here and there. Similar to what Kalonji said, where people not recognizing like I'm in charge or something like that. But occasionally I find myself asking, is it because I look young or is it because I'm Black? And I don't really have a lot of time to sit and figure out why somebody else is acting a certain way or questioning something. Or if somebody doesn't seem to like me, maybe because I'm a jerk, maybe I made fun of them in a meeting or I called out something, whatever. But I do recall a moment with later with a guy was a mechanic. He was a mechanic, and he really would give me a hard time. And this is working in an automotive environment, very macho, machismo, and what do you know? What you can do? And this guy used to always really give it to me, and I generally try to separate business from emotion. And I don't want to get into an argument with somebody at work about race, and generally you're never going to look like the non-guilty person, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have low expectations out of some people, but at least when I was coming up, I feel like it would be a case where, oh yeah, he's using the race card or something. If it ever got to a point where I needed to talk to HR, I would have, and I was close with this guy, and I shared a certain situation, which I won't go into detail. Basically, my frustration was like, look, I don't like this guy, and keeps giving me a hard time, and it's either going to be, we're going to step out back, or I'm going to get him fired. Like it's just that simple. And the guy that I spoke to was actually a mechanic as well. He's a white guy as well. And he shared some information with me about this particular guy that I wasn't aware of. And it actually made me feel a bit better about the situation because he saw it as well, and he called it out. And eventually this guy was dealt with. And it wasn't at my hands. It was essentially his own undoing. But it did make me feel better knowing that I had coworkers that recognized the racism. But this took a long time. It wasn't an instant turnaround, like get rid of this guy. He's nuts. It was, and some of this is business and whatever. But my general takeaway with situations like that is, it's better to address it and put it onto HR. If they don't address it and it's still a problem, escalate it as best you can, or look for something else. There's other jobs out there, and it might sound counterintuitive to say, you should force somebody to have culpability, but if it's that serious to you, get a good lawyer. If not, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Duwayno. And I think it kind of relates to another point I want to make. I remember one of my main frustrations when I started working in tech was that it was clear to me that I wasn't one of the good old boys. I didn't have an uncle that was an MD, or I couldn't even have like the cultural connection with a lot of the higher ups, the execs at the company. And so I always felt like the people who elevated the quickest was actually the folks that had the best relationships and not necessarily the highest performers. And it kind of relates to a question the audience has. I think that, I would have definitely benefited early on, especially from a mentor. So have you all found mentors in your field? And if so, what role have they played and how did you find them? Let's start with Kimberly.
Absolutely. Mentors are so important. I think I've probably had strong sort of professional mentors since my first job. And my mentors have been primarily Black women that were senior to me, which is a bit of an anomaly in technology in terms of having like an abundance of older Black women in STEM. Hearing some of their war stories, talking to them through things, coaching and development is key. I've also had some mentors that were male. I think diversity is important. Diversity meaning, different sets of people, whether gender, whether race, et cetera. But you've got to have somebody that you can talk to off the record, that you can tell them candidly kind of what you're going through. Somebody that's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. When you're going through situations and you're trying to determine, is it time to leave this role or this job, or am I reading too much into something? Having somebody that also either understands the landscape of that business environment or that company, or just the kind of the field in general. So absolutely find a mentor, treasure that mentor, and then you be a mentor to other people as well. There are definitely people that are coming up now that I can point to that that I mentor them. Like, so you definitely got to give it back, because I think that's critical.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm jealous of people that have like consistent mentors and like solid mentors. I was something that I did not look for. Like I can categorically say I didn't look for mentors, and not necessarily because I was I don't need it or whatever. It was just something that I wasn't that aware of. But I will say that I've had people along my career path that were either in further along in the career or in positions to where I was a subordinate to them that have helped me out and been sources of information and points of contacts for jobs, for advice, for did I break this or not? Like, am I going to get fired for breaking this? And like things that you're not really clear on. And I definitely would advise anyone early in your career and even later to seek out mentors. And that's something that I've been doing recently. And it feels weird now, like to be like this far in the career and like, hey, could you be my mentor? It's like, aren't you older than me? Which it doesn't matter. Age isn't really that important. And I read an article recently that was suggesting that older people in general, and not like we're 60 or anything, but people further along in the career should look for someone younger than them to stay relevant. And a lot of it has to deal with the pace of technology change. Like I can talk about the forecast for where lithium batteries are going to go and what's the next great energy storage device. But, when you say something is lit, I might be confused. Or when you say that you have an app that does, X, Y, Z, I'm like, well, I need to know about this. So it's great to stay fresh, stay aware of changes and changes in sentiment of people as well.
Well, I nominate myself. In case I'm putting myself out there, Kalonji, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm like Duwayno. I didn't have a mentor, unfortunately. I wish I did, and I would give that advice to anyone coming up now. Yes, seek out a mentor, preferably someone that is an African American. But if not, then seek out someone that has that experience that you're trying to gain. One of the ways that I kind of gained some knowledge in my job was just through my colleagues. There's a lot of people that were there before me, and becoming friends with them, talking to them offline, and what it takes to be a professional in this job set. So mentors, very important, but also networking is very important too.
Awesome. So I just want to remind folks, this is the C-Suite panel. We have some top Black talent on the camera, and they are here to answer you all's questions as well. So feel free to type them in the chat. I will ask the questions on your behalf. These people's time is very valuable. They probably wouldn't be doing this for free otherwise. So you might as well cash in on it while you can. So I did have a practical question from the audience about licenses, certifications, and things of the sort. So a lot of you all are probably have opportunities to either hire or be a part of the decision-making process for bringing talent on board. So in your respective fields, are there any courses or certifications or licenses that you look at and say, this person is someone that I'm looking for?
For me, it's my industry isn't really that concerned about licenses, unless you have to sign off on something that's being constructed or validated for structural integrity or electrical safety. But in that scenario, you're going to go to you're looking for very specific people to have that certification or that ability to sign off on something. But I will say that when it comes to certifications and licensing, you have to treat it as a case-by-case basis, or cases being the industry that you're working in or the particular role. And for one other thing to consider when you're sending over a resume, the first person that's looking at your resume is not an engineer. they're not a tech person. They have no idea. And I will say this emphatically. They don't know what you do. They don't know what the job entails at all. You have to walk into it assuming that. And they might look at a certification because someone has said, oh, we have to have somebody certified in that. But to that point, you want to make sure that your resume, if you're certified, that is obvious in your resume, and that if you're applying for a particular job, you cater your resume towards that. So you don't necessarily have to have proof or a line that says you're certified in Oracle if you're not applying for a job where the company doesn't use Oracle, if that makes sense.
I think from my perspective, the thing about my experience with technology is, licenses, certifications, all those things are good to have, give you credentials, but in technology, nothing beats experience and a delivery of track record and what you can do. So on the license front or the certification front, I remember when I was in the government, project management professionals, PMPs were big. There were even some contract structures that said, you've got to have this kind of certification if you're going to come on and try and be a project manager. So there are, in that one example, there are instances like that, certainly in cybersecurity and other areas where people tend to get licensed in various disciplines and whatnot. But definitely agree on the resume. That's a great point. How you structure your resume. Being mindful of the fact that it's a human resource person that's looking at that first, not the engineer, not the computer scientist, not the area in which you're going to be working in. So you want to use plain language also when you're talking about what you do, what you can do. But I still think, and my experience has been kind of your track record and your experience really speak for themselves, especially as you get, more and more senior into your career.
Yeah, to add to that, what I was going to say is that the senior level positions, I think they look more for that higher education degree. What I would recommend is go for that master's, go for that MBA. Those are the type things that I think those senior level positions, they open up to people that have those type of degrees. The certifications, I find in my profession, or at least in my job, a lot of the developers are consultants now. They're from India, and they learn these skill sets early over there, and they come in and they know them very well. So the certifications aren't as important to us as far as the jobs, as far as the senior level jobs. It's more about your understanding of systems, understanding of business analysis, being able to take requirements and being able to explain requirements to a non-technical person. Those types of skills are the type things that kind of bring you up in the management chain. The certifications, you can learn the technology if you open a book or if you Google something. You can learn the technology, but the intangibles are your speaking, your ability to translate highly technical things to someone that's technical. Those types of skills I think are very important too.
Got it. Well, yeah, thanks for that perspective, Kalonji. And I think Hampton definitely helped me a lot with development of my soft skills. One of the other things I want to mention about like things that make you more employable or more hireable, or even as an entrepreneur, this idea of a digital portfolio, basically putting the things that you've done in project form and displaying them on the internet. So I have some friends that are software engineers that work for companies like Google or Amazon, and other friends that do UX design, like user experience design. And they have a website that basically shows like, here are some things that I've done. And I think that one of the most effective ways today in 2020 to communicate that you know the thing, you have the skill, is to literally just show someone, not telling them like they're saying. So I don't know if you guys agree to that before we go to the next question, or have any thoughts on that. But
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's about, you know, being able to show, it's the experience and having a demonstrated sort of track record and an ability to get it done. And communication and soft skills is it's underrated. You can't, you know, you can't put that on a resume, the soft skill piece, but it shows up and it's absolutely needed in order to move up in any organization.
Yeah, I mean, had I known how much I'd be using like PowerPoint and public speaking and networking and reaching out and following up, I would have like drilled that even more in school, but definitely super important skill. And I think this is another interesting point here. We had another question from the audience about STEM field, but I think every field is like this now. It's almost become intellectual Darwinism. You know, you like, it's like survival of the most intellectual, the most intellectually rigorous. And, you know, if you're not learning constantly, if you're not keeping up with what's new in your field, especially in STEM, you could get replaced by some, I don't know, millennial Gen Z kid that has been paying attention to the bleeding edge stuff while you were doing your job, quite literally. So I think it puts you guys in a tough position. And the person's question was, how do you stay updated on these this new and current knowledge in your field?
I do think it's important. Like, we all get busy. I know for me, I'm like, I have to figure out when the last time was I had a training or something, because we all need to stay up on things. But, you know, I think it has to do with surrounding yourself from a team perspective, you know, with the right folks and working in a field or an industry where there's always some new hot thing out there. What I find that's effective in my organization is you set up a structure for that. Like, there's a group or an area that does innovation, and what they're doing is they're looking at and seeing, you know, what's cutting edge and what's out there. If that's the space you're in, then yeah, you've got to be that person that's keeping up with that. From, you know, from me and my perspective, it's my experience is more, you know, just making sure that right talent is coming in.
Yeah, for me, I also have a division in my company that actually looks at the newer technologies, and they'll bring it back to us and say, you know, is this something that you think you can use? And you can't say yes to everything, even though you might want to because it's new and shiny. But yeah, we have a division that actually looks at these technologies, and they'll brief us about what's new. But also on a personal level, you also have to seek out things. You have to think about it. Maybe there's a better solution out there for what you're doing, and you have to seek out things. Podcasts, you know, websites, blogs, anything that interests you, follow it. It doesn't have to be within your particular skill. You know, you can always do things like I'm interested in iOS, the iPhone operating system. It's all things that kind of round you out and bring out a different perspective that you might be able to bring back to your position.
And to piggyback on what Kalonji just said, podcasts, read, websites, tech sites. There's a lot of when I don't sound like an old man, but when I started out as an engineer, it was all of these like really boring tech magazines. Like, there's really thin paper. There's all the graphs look like they're technical graphs, and I'm like, I don't want to read this. But now there's a lot of people that are just generally interested in a technology that have websites that will go out and do their own reporting for a particular subject matter. So one thing that my industry is a bit different than a lot of the quote unquote quick turn advancements. Working in automotive, working in energy, the job isn't to be innovative. It's to make sure the lights stay on. It's to make sure that the gas keeps running. So in that sense, they're not interested in adopting new technology, at least not being the first iteration of it. So something new comes out, like, yeah, okay, sure. And I've been in meetings. I've worked at a startup battery company, and people are like, okay, this sounds great. Will it last 20 years? And when your response is, well, maybe, yeah, sure. We've done some testing. So it's a bit different for the industry, but to stay on top of the changes, I think is a bit easier to do now than it has been in times in the past. And even before our time, when there weren't trade magazines and there weren't as many opportunities to networking easily with people. A lot of times people were in a bubble with their one company. But changing jobs is a great way to learn new technologies. If there's something new that's out there, you feel stagnant in your new role, go work for them. Take what you know from your first 2-3 years experience doing something or with one company, and take that as, hey, I bring this to you guys and learn. And if it doesn't work out, go back to where you were, not necessarily the same company, but let's say the same industry or working with similar technology. You've gained a broader experience from that. And it's also allowed you to network with a new group of people. Really want to stress networking. That's something that I think is understated a bit, like you were saying, Justin, where the soft skills, going to conferences, maybe the first conference you're there and you're like, this is a bit boring, but I'm here. But eventually you're like, no, I want to present. Like, I sound crazy saying it now, but like, I don't want to go to a conference just to be at a conference. I want to go to present, even if it's for 30 minutes, an hour, part of a breakout session. I want to do that because that's going to give me the greatest opportunity to network with people. If you present on something interesting, new, or controversial, someone is going to challenge you during the session or afterwards. And that's just going to give you an opportunity to network or tighten up your position.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice. Like setting up networking situations where you have a platform or you're speaking on a platform. I know that's something I've definitely benefited from, where you're not just always coming to people like, look at me, like, look for me, hire me, but you're bringing people to you with your message and with your platform. So I think we have a little teaching moment here. I think this is an interesting thing for our audience to know about. But some of our executives are going to, with my next question, going to be sharing some opinions, but I want to make sure that our executives are protected from their own jobs. And I know, Kimberly, you have an announcement to say, and then I don't know if Duwayno or Kalonji, you all want to follow up with the same announcement, but this is an important part of this kind of work.
The views that I expressed this evening are my own and don't necessarily represent that of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah, I also want to have a disclaimer. The views that I express on this panel are my own and do not reflect the views of Citi or Citi Group.
I did not run this by anybody in HR, so I don't have a solid statement. But I will say these are my views, not the views of the NBGL or the country Australia.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting thing there. I mean, I think it's important for our audience to understand that, there's a difference between the opinions you express as an individual and the opinions of the company. And being sure to delineate that when you're speaking on a public platform like this is super important. So I'm glad you guys did that, and that's cool. So next thing here, we have a couple of interesting questions. One was about what you guys would tell yourselves as a younger version of you. So let's say you're walking across for the graduation ceremony and you got to talk to that person today. What would you say to them?
I say lay off the donuts and exercise more. I joke, but it's very serious. There's, I've made mistakes in my life, my career. There's opportunities that I've passed on or not pursued. But generally speaking, in terms of work, if a door has opened, I had a great conversation before having a job with a person who was interviewing me. Happened to be a Black guy, worked for IBM, and he gave me some really good advice about opening up myself to opportunities related to not working in a city or town that I'm comfortable with. And at the time, I'm from Norfolk, Virginia originally. I went to high school in Georgia, and I was going to either live in those two places. And this guy told me, that sounds a bit ridiculous. You're only 20, 21 years old, open yourself up, and now here in Australia. So that's something that's stuck with me. So I would give advice to anybody to be open to opportunities of beyond. But then, and that's career, traveling, networking with people, talking with people, experiencing new things. But outside of that, I like the idea of a bit of randomness and potential of the unknown. And I just encourage myself to be less afraid of things like that, and to keep looking for opportunities. Anything else is going to be like invest in IBM or Apple or Google or something like that. That's a bit self-serving. Yeah, Bitcoin. Oh my God, yeah, Bitcoin. I made money on Bitcoin, but I could have made a lot more money on Bitcoin.
Right.
I'm with you on that. Definitely an investment thing. I think don't be afraid to take risks. I think I don't know. I think culturally we are sort of raised to, get a job and, do well. Like it's kind of the structure of it all. And I think a lot of times we don't, a lot of what Duwayno was saying, kind of step out of the box and not being afraid to take a risk, whether that's a job in another city, whether it's a different type of a role or a different experience. That would be my advice to my younger self, is not be to take risks, actually.
Yeah, myself too. I think that would be the piece of advice I would give. Just to stay curious, stay curious. If something piques your interest, then check it out, learn about it, ask people about it, and and follow up with it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think you guys have a lot of the same sentiments that I would give myself 4 years ago or so, that when I walked across the stage. Definitely one of the other things I wanted to mention is, like, you want to step outside of the Hampton bubble sometimes. A lot of Hamptonians and other folks at other HBCUs, we kind of find ourselves in this network, and then for years we stay in the network and we don't do anything outside of the network. And while that's great, it can give you some awesome opportunities. The Hampton folks are amazing. There's a lot of things that, especially in my lane, I'm making science TV shows, and there wasn't a lot of folks I could find as mentors in the space. I actually did find one later on, but it wasn't until I stepped outside of the bubble. And so again, that's another way to attack discomfort until you lack discomfort. So couple more questions here before I kick it back over to Gena. So what do you guys want to see change in the STEM landscape? You guys have seen a lot more of the STEM landscape than I have over the past few years. What do you all want to be different?
I think the diversity, there's been a lot of good progress there, but there needs to be more. When I look at my company and I look at the executives, senior management, they're still not as diverse as it should be, and as diverse as it could be. So I think that would be one of the things that needs to change in this landscape. And there has been a lot of progress. There has been a lot of focus on getting more minorities in general into STEM education. But diversity is important.
That's what I was going to talk about, diversity.
I'm sorry.
No, spot on. I'm with you.
So I will say something controversial. I want to see less MBAs in positions of leadership. I started out working at Lockheed Martin out of college, and at the time, most of the senior level management people had engineering degrees, and there was a time before us when if you saw someone who was the CEO of a company, they were a tech company, they were going to be an engineer or computer scientist or mathematician or someone or having a degree in the space, and he or she would have a working knowledge of the tech, and they would be able to have a conversation about it and understand it. And now things are run by people that have never sat down and thought about something outside of, hey, you think, you should invent something that does this. And that's well and fine and good. And that's not a bash on people who have that as an interest. But personally, I think that we need to take a step back and have more tech people running companies based off of technology and not off of this theoretical idea of infinite profit earnings and profit growth every single year. I think it has hurt us as a country in the world, and we need to reassess what's important with technology and how it helps us, not how it helps investors and stockholders. And I'm a stockholder of tech companies, and I'm not offended by the idea that a tech company wants to produce reliable products that do good in the world versus some, hot debates, artificial value from producing nothing. So yeah, that's what I want to see.
I think that's a powerful point, and I almost think that it's less controversial now than ever before, just given that every company is now almost expected to have a voice and a cause that they stand behind. I mean, when we look at like Nike and how they kind of picked a side, something that historically would never have happened, and that was actually good for their business. Yeah, there's not always something intrinsically bad with only focusing on the bottom line, although I know that's often expectations of the shareholders. And I do want to say, this is another thing, diversity of talent, diversity of thought leadership in STEM, I think are things that are very important to me as well. I think folks will benefit from this. We actually I co-founded the STEM Success Summit. So we had 2,000 young people, undergrads, grad students, early career STEM professionals that came out. And this was literally 20 days ago, had some amazing mentors, just like the folks on this panel. And we got access to job opportunities as well. So you can Google that if you want to find out more about it. But headed fundraising, co-founded that, shameless plug. Kimberly, there's a question that's just for you, and I think it's a really good one. How has the STEM work environment changed and improved for women since you started working? And how do you navigate differently now than maybe you did when you first got into the workforce?
I definitely think you see more women in STEM, and I think that's important. The last two CIOs I had, which was the #1 tech job in the building, were women, or was a woman, a Black woman at that. But prior to that, just in general, I think you are seeing more women. One thing, as it relates to Black women, I'm not necessarily seeing like a rise or an increase there like I'd want to see. Women in general, certainly. I still think there's work to do relates to Black women. One of the things that I think we can improve on is the pipeline. So when I look at friends of mine who have children that are of the high school age or getting ready to go to college, I don't hear a lot of them majoring in, talking about women, majoring in STEM fields and things like that. So I do think that there's things we can do to increase the pipeline so that in years to come, we see more of that in the work world. But I think to answer the women question, definitely a lot more than I saw 10, 20 years ago. But still a lot of work to do as it relates to Black women in particular. And I wouldn't even, women of color to a degree, maybe Hispanic or Latino women as well. There are a lot of Indian women in technology. So anyway, so definitely specific, I think, to Black and Brown in terms of needing to still increase the STEM numbers a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, I think it's a huge deal to see like the increases, but we're not there yet, and we still got to keep working at it. So y'all have been absolutely amazing. I definitely learned a lot from this. I think that our audience learned a lot. If you guys are in the comments, in the chat, please show our folks some love. And last question, where can we find more info about you? I'm sure you guys are going to gain some excited, wet behind the ears mentees. So where can we find more info about you all?
LinkedIn is best for me. That's the thing that I'm on the most consistently. I do have other accounts, but LinkedIn is definitely my more consistent platform. So just Kimberly Hall on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I haven't updated in a while, but LinkedIn or Facebook, good old Facebook. Look me up.
Yeah, LinkedIn for me as well. That's going to be the best way. I'm on Facebook as well. And, That's Facebook. Everybody uses Facebook. It's a placeholder more than anything. But LinkedIn, I've been using a lot more just because I've been doing consulting work lately, and I'm listed under Duwayno, Duwayno. I'm the only one in the world. That's my claim to fame. If you meet another one, let me know. I got a problem with that. Just joking. But yeah, just find me on LinkedIn.
Gotcha. And same here, folks. You guys can find me on Instagram at Mr. Fascinate. You also can Google Justin STEM, and I think I got the first 4 pages of that. Google SEO, search engine optimization, is a big thing, especially now. LinkedIn is also a content platform. A lot of people don't look at LinkedIn as a place where you can post content and build a platform, build a following, and network the other way, like we were talking about with Duwayno, getting people to come to you. So consider posting content on LinkedIn if you guys really want to get some eyeballs on your resume and your work and things like that. So again, thank you all so much. You all did a fantastic job. I will definitely be reaching out to all of you on LinkedIn. So look forward to seeing that in your inbox. And I'm going to kick it over to Gena now to close us out.
Thanks so much, Justin. Really appreciate you taking the time to be our moderator. It was a great panel. Really enjoyed all of the great answers and discussion. I learned a lot, not being a STEM background myself, but learning a lot from our panelists. So a special thank you again, Justin, Kim, Kalonji, and Duwayno, and an extra special one to Duwayno because he called in from Australia from the future, because it's actually Friday morning there now. So thanks, Duwayno, for taking that time. I also want to thank 2 people behind the scenes that make this happen, Van Crawford as well as Kai Henry. So thank you both for all of the work that you've done. And thanks to you, the audience, for joining us and being active participants in the chat. And I wish you all a great holiday, and continue to stay safe out there. Thanks.